He's not
I had
loaded.
to,
Oh, there we go. There
I
we
guess
go.
I had to disconnect.
Finally,
I was
yes,
in,
yes, yes. Let's get started. Let's get started.
I'm,
Okay, okay, okay.
I'm
All right, I'm
sorry.
gonna drop everybody.
All right, see you.
Go ahead, Tim. What were we saying?
I had to disconnect and then like reconnect or something. It was
That's
weird.
fine. As long as you're here.
Yeah,
All right. Now we're beginning our next debate. Finally, this is great.
yeah,
Man,
sorry about
I
that.
was like hoping that you get on time. This is great.
I was trying for
Right
half
in
an
the nick of
hour though.
time.
That was
Huh?
He was trying for half an hour, he said.
Yeah, you were. I saw that you were trying for a half hour. Oh
yeah.
man. But I'm
Nothing
glad
worse.
that we got you here. I'm glad that you made it. Okay, great. All right, so we begin our next debate. It's going to be the Hierophant versus Timothy Norat on the proposition Jesus Christ resurrected. The Hierophant will be taking the affirmative, and Timothy Norat will be taking the negation. And since we start with the affirmative, Hierophant, we begin with your opener.
Can I just make a single observation?
Okay, go ahead.
This is kind of funny because you have theist Tim versus atheist Tim.
Yeah, that is true. Yep. Hierophant's name is Tim, so it's Tim versus Tim right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right then, Tim.
Welcome.
We're gonna begin your opener, 7-minute opener, and we'll start the timer whenever you say your first word.
Okay. Good evening. We are here tonight to ask one question. Did the resurrection of Jesus actually happen? My opponent is not ignorant of Christianity. He studied at a Reformed seminary. He lived much of his life as a sincere Christian, and I honestly respect that. But this debate is not about Calvinism. It is not about inerrancy. And it's not about denominational systems. It's about a single event at the center of history, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so my case tonight rests on three pillars. The first being history, the facts surrounding Jesus' death, and the disciples' testimony. The second being philosophy, the logic of God's existence, making the resurrection credible. And then third, existence, the coherence of Christianity itself, explained only by the resurrection. So let's start with history. Most scholars, be them Christian, atheist, or agnostic alike, agree on a core set of facts. Jesus of Nazareth was crucified and killed. His disciples sincerely believed they saw him alive afterward, and this belief ignited a movement that we call Christianity. Alternative explanations, they don't hold. Hallucinations are private and subjective, not shared in groups across different times and places. Legends take generations to develop, yet resurrection belief is embedded in the earliest Christian creed within just a few years of the crucifixion. Conspiracy cannot explain why the disciples willingly endured persecution and death for this claim. The simplest explanation, the ones that the disciples themselves gave, is the one that fits the evidence. God raised Jesus from the dead. But history alone isn't enough. Let's move to philosophy. If God exists as the necessary ground of being, then the resurrection is not an improbable violation of nature. It is the natural outworking of God's character. A miracle is improbable only if there is no God. But if God does exist, omnipotent, omniscient, and life-giving, then resurrection is not just possible, it's expected. And it is where divine necessity and human contingency intersect in history. And finally, existence. Why does Christianity exist at all? If Jesus stayed dead, there would be no Christianity. The disciples would go home, and another failed Messiah would be forgotten. But if Jesus rose, then history itself is reordered around him. That is why the resurrection is not just historical or philosophical. It is existential. It explains the persistence, the power, and the hope of the Christian faith. Now, my opponent may say, I know all of this. I was a believer once, and I respect that testimony. But sincerity in and in leaving Christianity does not erase history. It does not undo logic. It does not alter the structure of reality. Most people leave Christianity over inerrancy questions, church culture, or the problem of evil. And those are indeed real issues. But that is not tonight's debate. Tonight's debate is about one event, the resurrection. And the evidence points to yes. So let me close. The historical evidence is best explained by the resurrection. The philosophical framework of God's existence makes it credible, and the existential coherence of Christianity makes it enduring. History, philosophy, existence. The resurrection is not wishful thinking. It is the event that grounds faith, explains history, and reveals the God who is the source of all being. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tim. So that'll conclude your opener. Now, T Rock, we'll begin your 7-minute opener, and we'll start your timer whenever you say your first word.
I appreciate that, Heirophant. You did a great job. The question of whether or not Jesus resurrected from the dead is a historical question. I agree with my opponent. But history is a study of what happened in the past. It's also a science that involves probability rather than absolute certainty. I can tell you, for example, with absolute certainty that 3 plus 4 equals 7. That's how math works. Math involves certainty. History doesn't. I can't tell you with absolute certainty that Abraham Lincoln was an American president. There's always that possibility that I could be wrong. It could, for example, be some type of elaborate hoax. However, I can, based upon all the available evidence for Lincoln, determine that Abraham Lincoln was probably an American president. The threshold of probability usually exists in the middle of the spectrum. So if I can cross that threshold of greater than 50% probability, then I can say such and such probably happened. Give me 1 second here. Also, if I have a set of probabilities and I compare them, I can pick out the most probable within that set and say that this is the best explanation. For example, suppose we were to do this with the resurrection. Suppose I compared two possibilities. Number 1, Jesus resurrected. And number 2, Jesus was impersonated after the resurrection. Which is more probable? Well, clearly, before we even examine any of the evidence, we can say that number 2 is far more probable than number 1. Number 1 is an extraordinary claim, Jesus resurrected, and number 1 would also require an extraordinary amount of evidence to prove. However, number 2, Jesus was impersonated, is much less of an extraordinary claim. The burden of proof is much lower. Has anyone ever seen an Elvis impersonator? Well, suppose I went to Vegas and saw someone on the street dressed up like Elvis. Give me 1 second here. Without knowing anything about them, which is safer to assume? They are an Elvis impersonator, or they are the real Elvis risen from the dead? Which of those two is a rational assumption? Well, I think it's quite safe to say that we can assume that they're an Elvis impersonator. And notice in this example, I never mentioned having an absolute sense of certainty about them being an impersonator. And I'm done.
Okay, thank you for that. And that concludes the openers. And now the Hierophant gets 5 minutes, rebuttal time, or cross-examination. And we'll begin your timer whenever you say your first word.
So you mentioned threshold of probability, and I'm just stating this because you just stated it in your opener. You would agree that historical reasoning rarely delivers absolute certainty, correct?
I'm sorry, I had a little hard time hearing you. Could you repeat that?
I said you mentioned a threshold of probability. And so you would agree that historical reasoning rarely delivers absolute certainty, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So historians typically evaluate what explanation best fits the evidence, correct?
Correct.
And so our discussion is about which explanation best fits evidence surrounding Jesus' death and the disciples' claims, yes?
The last part, could you repeat that? Something about the disciples?
Yeah, our discussion is about which explanation best fits the evidence surrounding Jesus' death and his disciples' claims.
Right. I didn't quite understand your point, but
Well, then my next question is: you suggested that the resurrection is extraordinary and compared it to an impersonator. Would you then agree that this implies a coordinated hoax?
no, I'm actually not trying to argue that there was an impersonator necessarily, but I'm trying
Sure,
to.
I reclaim my time. Um, so you're trying on probability, right? We're comparing two explanations, which would actually infer a coordinated, impossible impersonation versus resurrection is claimed, right?
Possible. And also
So
comparing the probabilities.
again, reclaiming my time. Isn't it true that the resurrection is the simplest explanation that accounts for all the evidence? Empty tomb, appearances, rapid creed formation, transformation of disciples?
Absolutely not.
It's not. Okay. Why would you say it's not?
Well, because the simplest, I don't understand that point. So because something, I don't understand even the rationale, because something simple that's therefore true or the best.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So using this threshold of probability that you put forward, it seems that resurrection is more probable than impersonation. Then.
No, absolutely not.
Oh, okay, I guess. I don't understand how you're getting there.
Well, I used just in my example, I said if you don't know anything about the situation and you see an Elvis impersonator, what do you assume? You assume they're an
Yeah, but
impersonator. You don't assume it's
that's a
Elvis.
singular event. We have a creed within 3 to 5 years that admits a multitude of interactions with the resurrected Christ. And so you would have to have a cohort
Who
who
wrote that?
are pushing this narrative of an impersonator. This makes it incredibly complex. This isn't just the claim of a single individual. This is a claim of a group of individuals. So I'm hard pressed.
Are you
I'm hard
saying
pressed to
that?
see. I'm sorry, reclaiming my time. I'm hard pressed to see how this theory of impersonation provides a simpler explanation when indeed it becomes more complex the more you actually look at the state of the claim.
I don't think there's anything complex about an impersonator.
You would have to have a conspiracy supporting the impersonator. And throughout history, show me one conspiracy that did not fall apart.
I don't think it'd have to be a conspiracy. It wouldn't have to necessarily be anything that elaborate.
So who's the one person who's the supreme voice leading this resurrection claim?
I don't know. All I'm doing is comparing the
Thank you.
probability.
I end my time. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. That wraps up the first round of cross-examination for Heirophant. Tim, when you say your first word, we'll start your timer.
Okay, so of the 3 points that Hierophant mentioned, the first one was history. And as I said in my opening statement, I think we actually agree on that. We both accept history, but it's a study of probabilities. And I don't know if my Hierophant, do you accept that history is a study of probabilities, not certainties?
Oh, absolutely. I don't deny that.
We're on the same page on that one. I'm going to skip over the philosophy aspect of it because that's just not something I was prepared to debate. It just metaphysics and all that. I'm just not prepared to get into all that. The coherence of Christianity itself, I do want to talk about that a little bit. Do you own a gospel synopsis, Hierophant? Bible study tool?
The Gospel Synopsis Bible Study, like
Yeah,
Study
right.
Bible.
Right.
The closest I guess I would say is to that I have a copy of Sproul's Reformational Study Bible, so I'm assuming that might be your.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of, if you could pause, I was kind of waiting on that. Okay, so And it's eating up my time here, but so like the gospel synopsis takes the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it compares them side by side. And if you look at the resurrection accounts, literally every 2 lines or so, you find a contradiction and inconsistency and things that are very concerning. I'll give you an example of something that's
Sure, inconsistencies are expected, though.
this is my time. Just okay. So, for example, with in Matthew says that there were 2 women that visited the tomb, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James. In Mark, it says there were 3 women that visited the tomb: Mary Magdalene, Salome, and the other Mary. So you can harmonize the Mary Magdalene, the other Mary there, but the Salome is just an added one. And then on Luke, we have over 5 women being described there in the text. And then in John, there's only 1 woman. So in summary, Matthew has 1 woman, Mark has 2. Matthew has 2 women, Mark has 3 women, Luke has 5 plus women, and John has 1 woman. It's a huge inconsistency. You also see.
I don't think that's an inconsistency.
This is my time. Okay, so we also see things in the resurrection accounts. For example, like in Matthew. Matthew is the only one of the 4 gospels that mentions a great earthquake, a severe earthquake. And why would the other 3 gospels fail to mention a severe earthquake? And we don't see anything in history, going back to your first point, that has any kind of historical record mentioning a severe earthquake.
I don't understand what this has to do anything if we're arguing the probability of the
Tim, this is his time, Tim.
This is his time too? Okay.
No, your time. Sorry, his name is Tim too. Heirophant, this is his time.
So we're eating through the time here, but I could just go on and on. Like, was the stone rolled away when the women got to the tomb? Like, one gospel says it was, and one gospel says it was rolled away when they got there. It was rolled away as they got there. So inconsistency there. I mean, where did the disciples meet Jesus after the resurrection? One says atop a mountain in the sea of in Galilee. The other gospels say that one said they met him on the road to Emmaus. One says they met him inside of a home. So which is it? I mean, these are all inconsistencies in the text. I mean, one of them talks about the Roman guards. Like the Pharisees came up to them and said, "Hey, I think you should make up the story that you were sleeping on guard duty." That makes no sense at all, because if we all know that a Roman caught sleeping on guard duty, the punishment for that would be like unalivement. So these are not coherent Christianity. I mean, this is not coherency. This is inconsistency, wild inconsistency of stories. And I mean, I know you didn't argue with the text. I find it ironic. Most of my argument was based on the text of the Bible. So I'll stop there.
Okay, that'll conclude your time. Okay, on to the second round of rebuttals. Heirophant, we'll start your timer whenever you say your first word.
I think it's interesting that you bring up like the number of women instead of asking the correct question, that in first century Judea, why would a woman be named as the first witness at all? And so being hung up on whether there was 1, 2, 5, 50 doesn't matter. The audacity of the claim is placing a woman there as the first witness in the first place. That is not expected, nor would it ever be, especially in the first century Levant. But moving on, I do have some questions for you. You don't deny that if God exists, resurrection is possible, right?
That's a big if. So if God exists, then yeah,
resurrection is possible.
Sure. Hypothetically.
Yeah, but you'd agree that denying God's existence is a separate claim from whether Jesus rose, correct?
Denying God's existence. I don't deny God's existence.
All right, that's fine. Moving on. So historically, right, we must judge the evidence on its own merits, not by ruling out miracles a priori. Wouldn't you agree?
I had a hard time hearing you. I apologize.
So, in the idea of like giving a judgment of the historicity of the claim, right? We judge the evidence on its own merits. We do not rule out things like miracles a priori. Would you agree?
No, I don't agree with that. Because
So,
miracles, that you have to prove the miracle. So when you
yeah.
claim the miracle, you have to prove the miracle. The burden
So, if
of
again, reclaiming my time, if you assume miracles can't happen, then you've already decided the outcome before looking at the evidence, right?
okay, I don't know if I'm allowed to answer or not, but I'm not assuming that miracles didn't happen. What I'm saying is the burden of proof rests upon the person making the claim to prove the claim that
Yeah,
the
sure.
miracle.
Reclaiming my time, right? But in your counters, your naturalistic explanations, they all have problems in and of themselves, don't they?
No.
They don't.
Well, point a problem out.
Right? Again, you brought up this impersonator, right? And it's ridiculous to believe that a single person meeting an impersonator somehow convinced, eventually over 2,000 years, 2 billion people to believe this story. So there would have to be, again, sorry, there would have to be some kind of conspiracy behind the impersonation, which increases the level of complexity and reduces its probability. Do you agree?
No, totally disagree.
I don't know how you're getting there then.
Okay, so you said it's ridiculous to assume an impersonator. I think it's ridiculous to assume that a resurrection happened.
Well, if God exists, resurrection is not an improbable thing. If God does not exist, sure,
Jeff.
right? But moving on, right? You know that Christianity exploded out of the first century, yes?
Out of the first century? No.
It did not explode
Not
out of the first century.
maybe the fourth century it did.
I don't know what history you're looking at, but nevertheless, again, and these to push my point, right? These first Christians claimed Jesus' resurrection the centerpiece, not just an afterthought.
Is that a question?
That is a question, right? The resurrection of Jesus Christ has been, from the very beginning, the centerpiece of Christian theology, correct?
Possibly. That's debatable.
I'd like to see sourcing on that. Moving on. Isn't it true that this movement grew under persecution, without military power or political backing?
So because of something grew under persecution?
Yes or no, please. Is it true that the movement grew under persecution without military power or political backing?
Not true.
That's false, unfortunately.
No, I disagree.
If the disciples, moving on, had knowingly fabricated the resurrection through this impersonation that you're putting forth, aside from the complexity of conspiracy, what did they gain? Wealth, power, status? Did they gain anything?
So,
I'll take your silence. That's fine. Instead, right? They faced prisons, beatings, unalivement, didn't they?
yes, I do agree with that point.
Right? So doesn't that suggest sincerity at the minimum, and something real driving them at a maximum?
I agree with you there.
Yeah, that's
That's
time.
the end of my time.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to the third and final cross-examination.
So,
Sorry, no, not third. There's a second cross-examination with Tim. Go ahead, Tim.
I get a rebuttal, I think. So, you're saying that, and I'm trying to take notes, but it's hard to listen to you and take notes. I have a hard time. And I had a little bit of hard time hearing you. I apologize. So you started out with one point about the women witnesses. So how far-fetched is it that you're saying that because women were included as the first witnesses, that is just like a hardcore evidence that a resurrection exists? I have a hard time believing that. I mean,
I hate to admit this, but from a historical perspective, women were unimportant.
that women were not considered credible witnesses. But if you were writing a story, you can write a story about whatever you want. It can defy social norms, etc. So I don't find that to be a strong point. Now you said it's ridiculous to assume an impersonator is the best explanation. Now I'm not saying that I believe. I want to be real clear. I'm not saying that I believe the impersonator theory. I'm also not saying that it's the best theory. All I am saying is that it is far better than the resurrection explanation. And it makes a lot more sense. And it's a lot more plausible. It's a lot more rational. And it fits reality. Like as we have observed reality. Like we can't really observe someone scientifically rising from the dead. And I mean, people talk about empty tombs and things like that. You can go over to Israel today and visit the 3 different empty tombs of Jesus that they claim are Jesus. I mean, Israel's basically a fancy tourist trap, like with a lot of crazy relics over there where they make all kinds of extraordinary claims about fake history. And then your last point, you were talking about how Christianity grew under persecution without military power. I think that Christianity, and I could be wrong on this point, you might actually have me on this point, but to my knowledge, Christianity was not like exploding in directly after the time like that Jesus died. It kind of simmered. It did grow some, but I don't think it just blew the doors off for the first, until about 300 something during Constantine, when Constantine actually made Christianity the state religion of Rome. And that is what, juiced up Christianity and made it into the one of the largest religions of all time, if not the largest religion of all time. And you said it's without military power. So my argument with that was Rome not without military power? But I guess we have a different perspective on that point. And you're welcome to respond to that. I've got a little bit of time left.
Yeah, this is within the first century of the growth of Christianity, which, in reality, even if we look at Paul is a man who was so offended by this growing movement counter to rabbinic Judaism that he traveled from modern Turkey to Jerusalem to arrest Christians. This is not some localized thing. Paul himself was not from Jerusalem. He was from Tarsus. So, and we see this in his letters to Corinth, dated as early as the 50s, where we first are given the Corinthian Creed. So this isn't something that is small. This is something that is transforming nation states.
Can I chime in here? But Paul never witnessed the resurrection.
Wait, let me pause the time real quick so you can understand. Tim, this is your time. You do whatever you want with your time. You could always be
generous with my time. Paul didn't ever witness the resurrection. In fact, he never actually met Jesus. He had a vision of Jesus on the road to Damascus.
Mm-hmm. And it was affirmed when he met with Peter and James 3 years later and was given the creed.
A what now?
And then within 12 to 15 years, repeated the creed in his first letter to the Corinthians.
But it's just a creed, man. It's just something they came up with.
This is a statement of belief.
Yes, it is. I agree.
But this is the center point of the entire faith. If it's false, it falls apart.
It's debatable. That's debatable.
Okay, and that concludes the second round of the rebuttals. All right, on to the third rounds of the rebuttals. Tim, we'll start your timer whenever you say your first word.
Me?
I would like to.
I'm sorry, it's Heirophant. I'm sorry. You guys are both Tim.
I've never gone by Tim, so call me Rock.
Rock? Okay, I'll call you Rock and I'll call him Heirophant. I'll make sure not to say Tim. All right, go
Okay.
ahead, Hierophant.
So my opponent, as you can see, and I actually agree on a couple points. Um, Jesus existed. He was crucified. His disciples sincerely believe he rose. The disagreement is over what best explains those facts. I argue the resurrection is the most coherent explanation when judged historically, philosophically, and existentially. On history, the naturalistic theories collapse under scrutiny. Again, hallucinations. Psychologists agree group hallucinations are possible. No appearances to individuals and groups. Skeptics like Paul and James. Statements like there were over 500 at once. No parallel exists. Conspiracy, which goes into the impersonation thing. The disciples gained no wealth and no power in the first century of the church's growth. Only persecution and death. And guess what? Liars make bad martyrs. We could try to go with the legend, but the earliest creed in First Corinthians is dated to within 3 to 5 years of the crucifixion. And legends take generations, not months. So even skeptical scholars admit that the disciples had real experiences they believed of the risen Jesus. The question is, what explains them? My opponent wants to give some possible explanation. But that's not really a historical argument. It's just a philosophical presupposition. Because if God exists, resurrection is possible. To say it's not to say it's impossible is not evidence; it's bias. History demands we look at the evidence first and then ask what best explains it. Naturalistic theories break down. The resurrection uniquely explains things like the empty tomb, the transformation of the disciples from fishermen fearful for their lives into men who are willing to go into death to proclaim this, and the rise of Christianity. Dismissing it simply because it involves God or some other thing is stacking the deck, deciding the outcome even before hearing the evidence. And that's not skepticism, that's dogmatism. And finally, existence, the resurrection is not about just ancient data. It's about world-shaping reality. Christianity erupted from a defeated, scattered band of peasants into one of the most transformative movements in history, all centered on one single claim. He is risen. Billions today testify to encountering the risen Christ, and the transformation is existentially undeniable. A movement this massive doesn't just spring from hallucination, myth, or fraud. It points to something real, something true, and something living. So we're left with this. The history points to something extraordinary. The philosophy says we can't rule it out unless we're already closed-minded. And the existence of the church shows the power of that reality still at work. The resurrection is not just the best explanation. It's the only explanation that does justice to all three. I cede my time.
Thanks.
All right, that will conclude the third round for Hierophant. Now, T-Rock, you get 5 minutes of rebuttal. This is your last rebuttal time, and you begin whenever you say your first word.
Yeah, you ended on something that kind of shocked me. So you said it was like the only explanation. I think that's maybe the most ridiculous thing that you've actually said this whole debate. Like, it's not the only explanation. It's one of the worst. I don't know if it's the worst explanation, but it's one of the worst explanations that has the least amount of evidence. And we do agree that, you follow the evidence wherever it leads. I think we could be on the same page on that point. But, you mentioned hallucinations. I mean, that's not my argument, actually. I never mentioned hallucinations. So that's kind of a straw man, and I was kind of surprised that you went into that. Myth and legend have to develop over time. Well, how long did it take, Stan Lee to write Marvel comic books? I mean, you could write stories in a much shorter period of time. And you can also harmonize those stories and edit them and things like that over a much shorter length of time. You don't need hundreds of years to do that. It's not. And one thing that I'll just throw out a possible explanation for the resurrection, maybe it's just a literary invention to align with some things, fulfill prophecies of the Old Testament or something like that. Like, like to create this Messiah thing and to lend credence to Jesus's messiahship or something. I don't know. You said in your last rebuttal that the disciples experienced it. The disciples experienced it. Okay, quick question: yes or no? Were the Gospels written by eyewitnesses? The Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
We don't know.
Oh, yeah, we do know they were not written by eyewitnesses, and I don't know anybody who's a scholar that's making the argument that they were indeed written by eyewitnesses. And I'll give you an example. And also, like a lot of people who are listeners, they think, who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? And a lot of people think Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But those are church attributions. So we actually don't know who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but we do know a few things about it. We know that Mark was probably the oldest one, and that John was the youngest one. And, Bart Ehrman makes a great argument about, I might be a little bit off the topic, but Jesus being God, like John is the one that leans the most into that theology that Jesus was God. And, the Bibles have undergone a lot of revision and editing over the years. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of those type things. And, the resurrection, you could have some historical facts about Jesus buried into the Gospels. Like, for example, maybe the Sermon on the Mount actually happened. Maybe Jesus, being a carpenter's son, actually was the case. Maybe Jesus was born in Bethlehem. We don't know. Some of these facts about Jesus are plausible. They're really not. They're not that far-fetched, and you won't actually find scholars. They'll debate them somewhat, but not as much as the resurrection, because the resurrection is a pretty hard thing to replicate. You can't do it, and you can't observe someone being resurrected. I don't even know how that would, from a scientific point, happen with the cells in your body. Like once they've undergone death, like unalivement. Like how do they just come back to life from a biological standpoint and a physics standpoint? One of the things that I do is magic. I do coin vanishes and things like that. And it's a lot more likely that it was some type of magic trick. If it's not a literary, that it would be more likely that it would just be elaborate magic trick. There is evidence that Jesus did perform magic in the Bible. For example, turning the water into wine. That's something, I could do with a pack of Kool-Aid. And maybe a little bit of vodka, I don't know if it's safe to say that, but there's plenty of other explanations other than Jesus was resurrected that are completely rational and completely more likely than the resurrection.
Yeah, Jesus had a pack of Kool-Aid. Gotcha.
I didn't say that.
And that's time. And now we go to our closers. Heirophant, you get 3 minutes. We'll start your timer. You say the first word.
Tonight we have examined one question. Did Jesus rise from the dead? We agree on some historical facts. Jesus existed. He was crucified. His disciples sincerely believed he appeared alive after his death. The question is and remains what best explains these facts. My opponent has framed the resurrection as extraordinary, suggesting some impersonation or some other conspiratory method, most probable. But I want you to think carefully. Impersonation or anything else would require hundreds of people coordinating fraud, producing hundreds of witnesses, and then, after all of that, be willing to give their lives for this lie. I'm sorry, but that is far less plausible than the resurrection itself. Remember our 3 pillars: history, early creeds within years of the crucifixion, As much as I don't like to mention it, the empty tomb, even the Jewish polemic presupposes that Jesus was indeed crucified and was buried. Eyewitness appearances, all documented by multiple sources, even though the authorship of those texts are attested, there would be no actual motivation under the historical methodology they use, but nevertheless. Be it any naturalistic explanation. It wasn't a straw man, it was just pointing towards your naturalistic explanations, hallucinations, legends, or conspiracies cannot explain the totality of these facts. Philosophy, our second pillar, means that probability does not require certainty. We both agree on this. Using the threshold of probability, my opponent cited resurrection is indeed the best explanation for all the historical data. It accounts for the evidence where naturalistic explanations fail. And then third, existence, the transformation of the disciples, the birth of the Christian movement, and the ongoing impact of Christ's resurrection across 2 millennia show that something real and world-changing occurred. Fraud, hallucination, or myth, regardless, cannot account for this. So we're left with a clear conclusion. The resurrection is not only historically plausible, it is philosophically reasonable and existentially transformative. It's the best explanation for the facts. The resurrection is not a story we wish were true. It's an event that history, reason, and reality point to. Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and that changes everything. Thank you.
That is time. Perfect. All right. And Rock, you get your 3 minutes whenever you say your first word. Rock, you're muted. Hold on. You could unmute. I invited us. There you go. All right.
The last line of your, oops, I'm getting an echo.
Sorry, it's probably me.
The last line of my opponent's argument was Jesus Christ rose from the dead and that changes everything. Well, guess what? That's an assertion. And the way burden of proof works, the person who makes the assertion has the burden of proof to prove the assertion. I want to be crystal clear. I'm not claiming that I know what happened with any sense of certainty. That's like the God of the gaps fallacy. But to claim that I know something when the God of the gaps fallacy. But to claim that I know something when I don't know something, that's a God of the gaps. Conspiracy world is a miracle with no good solid evidence to back it up, and philosophically reasonable or rational, I would add. So one thing I really like to talk about with a lot of people is, what is rationality? Like if I say that I have a pink unicorn in my hand, and that pink unicorn grants me wishes whenever I want. Is it rational to believe that? Or is the default is it rational to believe that I have a pink unicorn in my hand that grants me wishes? No, it's not. Now, what if I started giving you more and more and more and more evidence to prove that? What if I actually had a pink unicorn in my hand? Then I might actually be able to provide you a sufficient amount of evidence to prove that. But because there is no pink unicorn, and I sort of just made that up, it's kind of like the resurrection. There is a lack of evidence to support this extraordinary claim. And extraordinary claims always require an extraordinary amount of evidence to prove. And the burden of proof always rests upon the person making the assertion. So what is the default? If you don't know what something is, the default is always, the rational default in light of insufficient evidence is always unbelief. I end my time. I'm done.
Oh, that'll complete. Gotta end. I'm trying to end the timer. Here.
Yeah, I'm done.
Do you guys hear me? Am I not heard?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
You guys hear
Okay,
me?
okay, great. No, because for a second I thought you guys couldn't hear me. Okay, great. All right, great. All right, just making sure because people aren't okay. Okay, it's good. All right. So, yeah, that concludes the debate, and now the judges are gonna give the critiques. Starting with Flenser now. I guess it's Flenser's turn.
Okay, yeah, this is a really good debate. I really appreciate everything that y'all brought to the table. You'll both have a good amount of historical knowledge and awareness of the arguments for and against. So I definitely want to thank y'all for bringing that. I think Hierophant's opening was really quite good. Went through kind of the minimal facts that historians can agree on. About how naturalistic explanations fail, the existence of Christianity being evidence in and of itself for the fact of the resurrection, and then made the general abductive case that resurrection best explains all of these disparate facts, especially given his claim that the naturalistic ones fail. Tim, T-Rock, I thought it was good. You both kind of agreed on that it was a historical question of probability and not certainty, and you kind of reiterated that, gave the Lincoln example. Said that to believe something, you need to move kind of across this threshold, right? This 1/2 or whatever it was that you said exactly, and that what's needed is to compare varying hypotheses and to see which one is more probable. So I think you all were really, really quite similar on the strength of the opening. I think I'd have to give it to Hierophant. I thought he was just a little more clear in his strategy of how he wanted to go and establish the resurrection. When we moved to the cross-examination, that was a little frustrating for me. I think Hierophant, you would ask a question and then didn't really allow Tim to answer it. I felt you reclaimed your time kind of before we got to hear the answer, so it seemed more like a rhetorical question at best. And then for Tim's cross, I thought that was good. It was a good initial cross-examination. I thought you all went really, really well back and forth throughout the totality of your crosses. I think there were very few issues that were brought up that weren't picked up, that weren't addressed. Women being reliable witnesses, the historicity of whether Christianity grew explosively from the first century on. I think those are good debates, good things to hash out in the debate, and you all did. And I think the closings for both of you all, for Hierophant, did a good job of kind of reiterating all the points that you wanted to make. I thought the one point that I felt wasn't nailed, or I don't even know that it was really brought up, was moving from something being possible to something being probable. So you said, like, if God exists, then miracles are possible. I never really heard a strong case for why that made it probable. I did recognize that you said, well, this is going to explain the totality of the evidences that we see better than these other various naturalistic hypotheses. So, and then Tim's close, I think also reiterated very well the core thesis, which was, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I think you finally, at some point late in the debate, finally said, hey, look, I'm not making the claim that Jesus was, the resurrection story came from some imposter story. Right? And I think for the majority of the debate, it sounded like that was what your favorite hypothesis was. So it was good to see, like you were saying, it's just an example, perhaps literary invention, what does all of that. I thought it was great to bring up I thought a point that you could have driven home better would be like, at several instances you were questioning the reliability of the Gospels. I thought you could have done a better job of tying that into why that should make us doubt this core central claim that it
I agree.
seems they do converge upon. So I think that was kind of a missed opportunity there. So I think
Can I respond to that real quick?
well, we'll get into that
Okay.
afterwards. So I think it was a really close debate. I think I will have to give it to Hierophant on this one. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Fencer.
That's really hard for me. I want y'all to know.
All right. Either Mitch or Friction next.
The opening, very similar to Flancer. I think Hierophant, you did a good job at highlighting the arguments you were going to lay out, the historical argument, the philosophical / logical argument, and then the existence argument. I think you did a good job at, in the cross examinations, making sure that you were kind of going through all of the naturalistic explanations of the resurrection and kind of systematically kind of debunking them. I do think at some points, you covered maybe too broad a base. It seemed like pre-prepared almost, because T-Rock had only mentioned by this point, I think, the impersonation hypothesis, but you went to like a bunch of others. Don't think that's necessarily a negative, but it did seem a little pre-prepared. So, and then in the closing, I think Hierophant, you did really well to reiterate all your points. So you scored pretty highly, and then for T-Rock, opening really good. You you gave you gave a clear like concession where you agree on the history, but does that actually this is a probabilistic claim? Does it raise the probability above a certain threshold, and then you set that threshold? In the cross examinations, you seem to flip flop between positions. It wasn't clear what you were defending. You kind of started with the impersonation hypothesis, but then said, that wasn't actually your only hypothesis. And then at the very last cross examination, you kind of broadened to a bunch of other hypotheses, which I thought was pretty late in the game to construct in terms of like an argument that should have been done earlier, perhaps, and then supported. But then in the closing, I think you did a good job of reiterating your first point, which was kind of the Hitchens razor, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which was your central thesis. So I give it to Hierophant overall.
Yeah, okay.
So Friction's
So,
next. Go ahead.
yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I thought Hierophant's basic structure to his opening was pretty good. Full disclosure, I don't think it's a good argument, but it was made all right. Basically, sort of minimal facts and then appealing to certain facts about the birth of Christianity. And,
I'm having a hard time hearing you, man.
so let me put my device in a bit of a different position. Is this any better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was decent, and then the with Timothy's response in terms of the just comparing the likelihood of this versus the example of the person that was I forget the term now, the impersonator, yeah. That seemed all right. I feel like the point could have been fleshed out a bit better, but it seemed fine to me. But overall, I think it seemed to me that throughout the discussion, especially in the rebuttals, that Hierophant's points were largely unaddressed, and so I'd give the win to him overall. I could say more, but I'll just leave it at that.
Good debate, T-Rock. I enjoyed the debate.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. And this is my first solo formal debate, so
It's all good, man.
So that
I
was for Hierophant, right? So there's three.
yeah.
Okay, great. So Hierophant, congratulations. Congrats to
Wait,
both of you
are we
guys. You guys
deciding it,
both did very well.
or is it by poll?
Huh? Sorry.
It's not the judges that
What?
are deciding it. I'm asking, is it the judges that are deciding, or is it by poll?
Yeah.
No, the judges decided.
Oh, I thought you were polling in addition to
Yeah.
us. Okay.
No.
Well, then
The
I'm
polling
going to
is
change
just-
it then. No, I'm kidding.
All right. So now we have time for well, I guess you have
Stunning
questions.
upset.
But... Sorry. Oh.
I said a
All right.
stunning
So
upset. Flenser.
all right. So I mean, we have questions for. We're gonna try to wait. So Mark, you're saying that you're gonna go to work in an hour?
Work at 11 p.m. Eastern, so 1 hour and 33 minutes.
Man, yeah, because I mean, like you're supposed to debate. So
Yeah, I know.
let me just ask Cage and who is Logic Troll, right?
You stupid bitch! You made me wait already an hour, and now you're fuck you.
All right, so it seems as though Mark, if you can't make it to your debate,
Fine, go ahead. Fuck it. Go ahead. I'm just for future reference. Whenever you tell me a time, I'm adding 3 hours.
No, Cage, you think that was my? You think that I had? You think it was my fault? Like,
I
it
thought
doesn't seem
I
like
was
it's my
supposed
fault.
to start at 10, so that's my bad.
Well,
Oh,
it looks like you're
also,
going to be late to work, Mark.
Also,
What is
I
it?
didn't,
Sorry.
to answer something Flenser said, I didn't push my positive metaphysical necessity, but it is like if the necessary being exists and necessary enters contingency, necessary cannot maintain necessity if it subsumes itself to contingency. So it can't reach a terminality. So the resurrection would be the only like plausible explanation because the necessity can't terminate itself in contingency.
no.
It wouldn't be necessary.
Well,
All
now
right,
we're into
Jeffrey
that
Truth,
kind of
do you have a question?
Q-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. If I can just like head off the Q&A bit. T-Rock,
Yeah.
Hierophant's logical claim was something like God existing would raise the probability of a resurrection, right? But that's to say that like some other belief that you don't have would raise the probability of the thesis in this debate. So I would have loved to have seen you push back against that. Like it's basically he begged the question in his logical
So
claim.
God existing would raise the probability, but it doesn't. You don't have evidence, so
Would have loved to have seen you
that's
like
the
push
problem.
out in the debate because I thought that was a really like weak logical
But
point.
still lack evidence.
Mhm.
You have a major lack of evidence going on. So I'm kind of. Can I just say something real quick? I'm a little disappointed in myself a little bit. I think I had a little bit too much focus on the impersonator theory. I only wanted to use that as an example, but I think I gave people the impression that that was my go-to thing, and I really don't have a go-to thing. I just don't believe. I don't exactly have a position. I just don't believe the position that the resurrection occurred. So
So
I don't have the burden of proof to prove a position. I don't have a burden of proof to prove the impersonator theory or to prove all these things. And I know they were saying he was debunking everything, but I don't think he was debunking everything. I mean, he was trying to like dismiss those things, but there's still a better explanation than resurrection, even if they're not a good explanation.
Yeah, I think you could have pressed harder on, well, what's the prior probability of the
And
resurrection.
another thing I forgot to mention that was kind of one of my golden or my silver bullets, and I totally forgot to mention it, but there's so many mentions in the Bible itself of the disciples not recognizing Jesus, and I totally forgot to mention that point. There's like 5 or 6 examples of it.
Yeah, they're pretty clueless.
And I totally forgot to mention that point. And that's, I regret that. But I mentioned it now. So, and I really don't I don't care about winning and losing debates.
Oh, I don't care. My counter to that T-Rock would be that they wouldn't have expected it to begin with.
All right, let's try to move it along. So, Jeff for Truth, you have any questions?
I think it's just more of a comment. So I understood that debate a lot better. Since it's
I wrote it just for you, Jeff, for Truth.
Yeah, down my alley. And T-Rock, I understood the judge's responses to the debate. You have the correct position that Jesus did not resurrect from the dead, but you didn't argue it very well. And so I want to encourage you to watch my debate next Friday, or come watch my channel, or come join my live. And because Heirophant is making all sorts of claims that are not even corroborated by the evidence. He's saying like it's a factual statement that the creed of 1 Corinthians 15:3 was dated to the 30s. That is an absolute baseless claim with no support whatsoever. In fact, no letter of Paul can be has any reliable evidence to date to the 1st century. The first time 1 Corinthians ever shows up in history is in
But creeds don't really bother me.
We have dating up to 55. But whatever, Jeff. Do you have a question, or are you just going to keep?
No, it was just a comment and encouragement for T-Rock.
Well, I'll say this, Jeff. Like, I mean, I did think about what you said about simplicity, and I'm like, I bet Jeff will like mine a little bit better, because I talk and I don't use as many big words, because one of my backgrounds is elementary ed, so I have to kind of lower the the vocabulary. I have a lower level of vocabulary. I'm just being honest. And I'm also a custodian. I'm not like a professional. I clean toilets for a living. Like, I have a minor in Bible, but I did study Bible. I actually have a little bit more than a minor, but technically speaking, I just have a minor in Bible. So I'm going up against somebody that did going on their doctorate, So
I'll call in if I have to.
Let's move in. You're calling late?
Can I say one thing though, too, real quick?
Okay, let's move on.
I thought you did a great job in terms of the professionalism. Like you did a really professional level presentation. I thought you did really good.
And listen, I do want to say to you, like, this is something Mitch and Flenser picked up on. Don't blame yourself for the impersonating thing. I made that your thing in my argument. Yeah. Like, I made it your thing. I kept pushing it on purpose.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. All right, cool.
We call that sophistry.
I didn't know what you were doing. I didn't realize you were scheming something on me, man. I thought you were my friend. No, I'm just kidding. We can still be friends. It's all cool.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed it. I live for stuff like this. I enjoy the heck out of stuff like this. I don't like screaming matches. I like more intelligent, back and forth, like that. Because I feel like I learn something, that way.
All right, Prook, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. So the first question was to T-Rock. I was going to ask, why would the disciples not recognizing Jesus be like a pinnacle argument for you?
Well, because one of the things that might point to is the notion that Jesus, it wasn't actually Jesus. It was an impersonator of Jesus. Well, and like, it kind of begs the question, like, if they spent all this time with Jesus, like they were his disciples, and also we're talking about Mary, the Marys, the two Marys. They spent a lot of time with Jesus. Why would they not recognize him?
So is that not assuming that the Gospels are reliable as opposed to Paul's letter to the Corinthians church, which would be vastly more reliable than the Gospels?
I didn't quite understand the question.
Isn't that assuming that the Gospels are reliable?
I don't think the Gospels are reliable, but that's my opinion.
Right. So then my question would be then, why would you think that that would be a good argument to use the gospel narrative saying that they didn't recognize Jesus as a refutation?
Because most of the evidence for the resurrection is in the Gospels.
Well, I'm pretty sure Heirophant brought up the 1 Corinthians Creed, which, by the way, Jeff just came
That's
up.
true. Yeah, he
Did not
brought
know
that
what he
up.
was talking about there. He said I think Jeff thinks the 1 Corinthians Creed is the letter to the Corinthians church. That creed that's an oral tradition that was preserved by Paul. I just want to say that's not to T-Rock, but yeah, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wasn't prepared to debate the Corinthian Creed. Yeah, I just wasn't prepared to debate that point. So it's not something I had the forethought of even thinking about a whole lot of creeds. But to me, like, I mean, I'm just speaking on my own personal, like, it doesn't really move the needle for me in terms of belief. It doesn't. I don't go and say, "Oh man, look at this creed. Oh yeah, I believe in a resurrection now." Like, what? Like, I don't know how you get there, but I guess I know there's people of faith that believe that, and that somehow lends credit. But they kind of already believed the resurrection to begin with. It just kind of reinforces their preconception about the resurrection.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. That's a good point you made. Yeah. Fun. This is fun.
I will say you can get a lot of mileage out of the literary device explanation. Like, that's a pretty common trope that the followers don't recognize the risen being. So,
are you talking about my argument about it being a literary invention?
Right. I think you can explain a ton of stuff with literary invention, just like you can explain a lot of stuff with, well, God wanted it that way.
Right.
All right, Slurms, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question for both debaters. There's so much negativity in the world right now. It's just so upsetting. I just wanted to ask you both a question. Could I get each of the debaters to say something nice about the other one?
I think I did.
I don't think I said anything bad about him to begin with.
We kind of did. I mean, but I'll reiterate it.
There's so much negativity in the world right now. There's so much division and anger and hatred in our.
Okay.
And
I'll say this about Hierophant. He did a very, especially like on his opening and closing, he was very well prepared. He delivered things very articulate, and he was very well prepared. And in fact, I'll just concede. I think he was a lot more prepared than I was. And I tried. A lot of my points were like improvised, but I try to do the best I can. I work a full-time job, so it's, I did the best I can.
All right, we're just looking for either Placide or Logic Troll to answer me on whether or not he wants to postpone his debate so that we can put Mark and Placide's debate up next. I'm just waiting on Placide if he wants to come. I shared the live with him. I don't know if he's here. Placide, are you here? Placide is not here yet. And neither is Logic Troll. So we're waiting on one of them so that we can continue. I didn't do it without confirmation, Cage. I'm asking Logic Troll. Logic Troll has not answered me yet.
So let me get this fucking straight. Let me understand this here, because I'm having a hard time tracking. You, in response to content-related reasons, formed the belief that we should move Cage's debate back an hour. But on those content-related reasons, they were vacuous because there was no actual fact.
Yo, Cage, I'm asking Placide and I'm asking Logic Troll, okay? Logic Troll, I'll honor your debate if Logic Troll says that he needs to debate now. I will honor it, okay?
He just texted me.
He texted you? What did he say?
He said, good luck. Because you know what he was. You know what his belief was. You know what his belief was in response to the reasons. Was that the debate was at 10? Dumb fuck.
Yo, I didn't look. This was last minute. Mark just told me now that he had to go to work in an hour. This is not something that
I'm
I
calling
do.
Fuck you,
off.
Mark.
I'm gonna be teacupping here soon, and I'm gonna call in and say I'll be late for your debate.
You better not fucking call. Well, that is insane. This is a TikTok debate, motherfucker. You got bills to pay.
Well, if he wins the debate, then it'll count. Like he's making more money off of the
Let's
debate.
be so fucking for real, all right? I'm not gonna say it.
We can always debate aesthetic realism right now, Cage.
No, wait, hold on. No. This is not a debate between you two, okay? It's formatted and scheduled for Logic Show to
Itching to
debate
let that shit
Kings.
bust.
So, Mark, are you saying that you're willing to just keep your time, or you still have to debate now?
I'm willing to keep my time, or if I could go next, I don't care. I'm flexible.
Okay, great.
Well, look, I have a preference that you don't call into work.
Yeah, I do too, but it doesn't look like either of our interlocutors are here. Either way.
Yeah, we'll just wait. We'll wait. If Placide comes here first, or if Logic Troll comes here.
It's like 7 p.m. for Logic. Why in the fuck is he late? Actually, it's 6:42 for him.
On the West Coast, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
No, Jim, no, Mitch. Yaya's attitudes towards given people have no bearing on my behavior normatively at all.
I'm gonna head out of here, guys. Nice. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Well done.
Great job. Okay.
Great job.
Oh, look at me. My name's Mark. Oh, I work for a living. Oh, stupid.
All right, we're just waiting on Placide or.
So how's the weather today, guys? Because evidently we don't have anything else to fucking talk about.
No. We have. We're just waiting on waiting on either Placide or Logic Troll.
Yeah, and while we're waiting on them, I just want to say to whichever one of you motherfuckers kicked me, I swear.
Again, this is great.
No, I believe you support me, Mitch, in a platonic friend. Oh, we'll go Cage type of way. It still doesn't motivate me. That's like saying Ronaldo Messi should be motivated by any number of his fans to hold the behavior that he wouldn't otherwise have simply in lieu of that motivation, or simply in lieu of the attitudes of his fan. That's stupid. And yes, I'm equating you two to being all Messi's fans.
Okay.
Why does Jim think I'm the affirmative? Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Wait, is Placide here? No, right? So.
Placid just sounds too much like flaccid to me. I can't say it. I just call him solid.
So it seems as though that I guess we'll just continue with the regular scheduling. If Placide's not here, so we'll just wait on Logic Troll. Oh wait, Placide. We're just waiting on Logic Troll. I want to see if Logic Troll wants to debate now or.
Mark is not calling into. Well, I'm not going to make Mark call into work because of my bombastious, fictitious attitudes towards being pushed back an hour. I don't fucking care. Mark, I know you're listening, Mark.
Okay, so Placide said he'll be here. He can be here. It just depends on whether or not Logic Troll accepts the change or if they want to debate now. So we'll see.
Well, what happens if? Yes.
Okay, great. So Logic Troll, do you want to push back your debate to be the next debate instead of now, or do you want to debate now?
The most.
Yeah, Mark. Is Mark here?
What it also got to honor with my opponent is saying too, but I don't.
Yeah, I ask both.
Dude, he's too nice. I can't do this to him, bro. I can't. This is not gonna work.
Okay.
I'm gonna feel morally wrong about it.
Placide said that he'll take the original time at 10:30. So okay, you guys, we could start the debate with you guys then.
Oh,
If Mark
Placid's gonna
stays
make him
around,
call into work? Oh, that's fucked up.
hey, this is not. I didn't at 10:30, so
Okay, alright,
that's
whatever.
just is what it is, you know. All right, so let me put the flyer up. There we go. The background, great.